In the state where it was once said there are more cows than people, dairy agriculture is going through some tough times. Low milk prices have made it hard for farmers to hang in there until better times return. The number of dairy farms in Vermont has declined to less than 700, a drop of about 400 over the past 10 years. There are fewer cows, too, although that decline has been less precipitous. There's about 126,000 cows in the state today, compared to about 137,000 in 2010, according to the Vermont Department of Agriculture. But dairy agriculture is still a major part of the state's economy, as well as a cultural touchstone. So we decided to take a look at how the industry is going and adapting. One place we stopped in at was North Meadow Farm on North Road in Manchester. There we met Lisa Cross, who is the manager of the farm, which uses all the milk its cows produce in cheeses and other dairy-based products it sells in its gift shop.
We sell raw milk, we sell farm fresh eggs, we make cheese here on the farm using only our milk. We don't ship out our milk at all. So we make cheese, we have beef, grass-fed beef, and we do have a garden. We have a large garden, and we have a farm stand during the summer.
On the dairy side of things, what are some of the challenges you're seeing? How difficult is it to kind of make a living doing dairy, I guess is the basic question.
It's very difficult. It is extremely difficult, because if we were to send our milk out, we wouldn't make any money to survive. Right now, with us using all of our milk here, we can sell the raw milk at our price, like a wholesale price. There's no middleman, and we use the milk for the cheese, and the cheese is really good, and we sell the cheese here out of our store. If we had to ship out our milk, I just don't know how we'd survive, because the cows, our dairy cows, require a lot of maintenance and feed, and we do all of our own haying, and we use the hay that we get in the summertime to feed during the winter. And then we also give them a little bit of grain, and we have to pay for that too, which is very expensive.
Farming has never been known to be an easy job, and that part of it hasn't changed much, she said.
That's the way it is. We are up and at it by 5 a.m. at the latest. Sometimes we sleep in at 5 a.m. Usually it's a 4 a.m. morning. One day a week it's a 4 a.m. morning when I have to make cheese, because I get up at 4 a.m. because I have to pump the milk over from our milk house before they start milking. So I have to get up and do that and get the tank clean, ready for more milk to go in. We try to start milking by 6:30. It takes maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours to milk and clean up. Then we have to take care of all the animals. We have a petting farm, so there's 3/4 of our petting farm animals are rescues. So we have to go out and take care of them, make sure they have fresh water, food, and that their pens aren't that messy, and we can clean them out in time before people show up. After all that's done, like right now, pretty soon the weather breaks, we're gonna start haying. So we'll get the chores all done and go start cutting fields and start the hay season. And if it's not a hay season, we're basically doing chores, and then we try to do one or two extra things like fix the fences. There's always something to do. There's always an animal trying to get out and breaks a fence, so we have to fix that fence.
Cows aren't the only animals at North Meadow, which has a petting farm and hosts school tours, along with its other visitors to acquaint them with farming up close and personal. And selling its own products is one pathway out of the paradox dairy finds itself in, where fewer farmers are producing more milk, which keeps prices low. Then we journeyed up to Montpelier for conversations with Laura Ginsberg, dairy specialist with agricultural development for the state's Department of Agriculture, and Anson Tebbets, the state's agricultural secretary.
Dairy is in a particularly challenging spot at the moment, where prices for commodity dairy producers have been low for a number of years, and we've seen quite a few dairy businesses exit the industry, either still farming otherwise, or they've retired, all out, or transitioned into other industries, or working off the farm. What we are seeing is that there's not a great outlook for prices. So farms are in a position now where they're making some really tough choices. In the state and across the nation, we continue to see a decline in dairy farm numbers overall. With the outlook not looking great for a lot of farms, it is hard to keep in mind that some farms are actually doing okay and some are doing better than okay. They're doing well. It is all about planning and the amount of debt that farmers have and what markets they sell into and the choices that they've made as business owners over the years. But this continued long downturn in prices is really hurting everybody, from the small to the large, conventional, organic. All the producers are feeling the hard times right now.
Is there any pathway you see out of this? I mean, aside from, like, say, the federal government raising the dairy price support level, what is the route out?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a hard solution because the problem is so complex. It's international markets, it's declining national consumer demand for fluid milk, but an increase in demand in other products. Dairy is not exactly a very elastic industry. Milk is produced daily. It has to be processed within a number of days, and most products cannot be stored long term like other products. And so the industry itself can't adjust overnight to changing consumer preferences. So what we're really working on is figuring out how best to meet those changing consumer preferences, and also finding strategies that the farmers can use to either decrease their cost of production or become more resilient business owners throughout this downturn.
Well, I would say agriculture is always evolving. It always has, and there's some transition going along. It's been a rugged stretch for dairy, and we're trapped in a federal system. So we're working through some of those issues, trying to get farmers to a better place. One area that we are seeing tremendous growth in right now is in the world of hemp. Currently, latest figures, we have about 300 farmers who have decided to grow hemp, and that's about 3,500 acres. We expect much more. We're getting about 3 to 5 applications per day of people wanting to grow hemp in Vermont. So they register with us, so we know it's in Bennington County, we know it's in the rest of the 13 counties. So that area it's got some potential, and we're seeing an opportunity to grow that industry as well.
What about organics? I mean, a few years ago, it seemed like organic farming was a kind of the hot new thing and the wave of the future. Is that are we still seeing the same kind of growth and excitement in that area as we were seeing earlier?
On the dairy side, with organics, it is still a major player in Vermont. Now, the dairy industry in organics they're going through some of the growing pains as well as conventional. What has happened is there's too much organic milk out there, and some of the milk handlers, some of the companies have curtailed, so they're not buying as much. Most of the organic companies are not taking on new farmers because they have enough milk right now. So it's become, in a sense, a commodity just like conventional, so they're working through their growing pains as well.
And I was just thinking, Vermont historically and culturally is so identified with agriculture. Tourists who come here kind of half expect to see cows on a pasture and barns and working farms. Is there any sense that the state ought to be stepping in to kind of help farms that are struggling in order to keep that landscape happening and alive, or is that just going to be a case where the free market's going to do whatever the free market is going to do?
Well, I think we have a role in government to be as supportive as much as we can. Of course, we don't have the resources to solve all the issues. We do have a program with the agents called the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, and that is focused on actually productive agriculture land based on forestry, based on value added, so we can provide potentially grants to folks. So if they need a piece of equipment that helps their cheese operation, or they have a situation where they need some help, they may be making wood products. We do have a grant program. We're granting out about $650,000 a year, all tied back to the working lands, productive agriculture. So we do not want Vermont to grow up to brush. It's part of why people come here. Tourism visitors are part of our landscape. We need to keep them coming here, and if it's not in productive agriculture, that's going to impact our tourist industry as well.
Jesse Pomeroy grew up working on a family farm in Londonderry and continued farming right on through. He described some of the differences between then and now.
Well, you used to be able to make a living milking 30, 40, 50 cows and shipping the milk. The prices were lower than they are now, but costs were lower too, and they kind of stayed in line with each other. And there were ups and downs in the price of milk, but the downs never lasted more than 6 months or a year, and then they rebounded. In the bad times, you cut back, and when the price came up again, you paid down debt. That's when you bought your new equipment. But the new norm, I guess, of dairy farming is that this downturn in price has been going on for 5 years, and who knows when it's going to end. And you can only operate below the cost of production for so long before you just can't do it anymore. Right now, there is more milk in this country than what we need, and in a way, we've been our own worst enemy, because for years we've been told get big or get out, and when times were good, traditionally farmers added cows so they could make more milk, make more money. When times were bad, farmers added cows so they could make more milk and try to get out of debt. And we're just swimming in milk now. Ironically, there are about fifth or sixth of the dairy farms that there were back in the 60s in this country, but there's just about the same amount of cows. So the farms have gone from 50 cows to 5,000 cows. The farm I grew up on, my father milked 20 cows at the most, raised 4 kids. He had to do a little bit of part-time work off the farm, but in those days a lot of people did. When I had my farm in Londonderry, I plowed 20 driveways in the winter to help make ends meet, and milking 55, 60 cows. But you do what needs to be done, but you're able to get by. And now, even with off-farm income and spouse working full-time off the farm, you're just barely scraping by, and it's a different picture. I guess it's time, my opinion, it may be time to seriously look at quota, which had such socialistic overtones for years that nobody in this country wanted it. But now, maybe that's what we need to do. It's worked in Canada for years. The Canadian dairy farms have been viable for quite a while, but they get a decent price for the milk up to their quota limit, and then if they go over that, they get way below the cost of production, so there's no incentive to overproduce. And maybe that's what we need in this country now. I don't know. There's still a lot of resistance to it, but there's more and more of mainstream dairy farming that are ready to accept it. So I see 2 scenarios in dairy farming in the Northeast. That we're going to have the huge farm still. A big farm in Vermont, 1,400, 1,500 cows, and they're not, I don't know if there's any bigger than that, but there's a few of those. And so I see probably the majority of the milk being made by 500 to 1,500 cow farms. But farms like what we're doing here, small scale, not shipping milk, direct to the consumer, mixing in agritourism, that is the growing part of agriculture in the Northeast that I see. And there are farms all the time embracing this more and more. And I'm real optimistic about what we're doing here. I think it's going to work, but we will never get into the commodity market. All the milk we sell here as raw milk, or we run it through the cheese vat, and then if there's anything left over, we feed it to animals. So we use every drop of milk here on the farm, and then you do whatever else you can produce on the farm and sell it direct to the consumer, and I see that as what's going to keep Vermont agriculture going.
Milk prices have declined by over $7 per hundredweight since 2014, when they peaked at $23.63. Now a similar quantity of milk only sends a little over $16 into the dairy farmer's pocket. Until that changes, it will be hard to see the number of dairy farms growing again. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.